Masechet Baba Kama Daf Chaf Dalid. New Mishnah. Ezehu Tam ve'ezehu Mu'ad. We know that a short, if it's Tam, innocuous, when it's born, it's innocuous. We're talking about a domesticated animal where even an ox does not generally go and gore someone. And therefore the owner only has to pay half of the amount of damages. How does it become a mu'ad, such that after that it would have to pay full damages? And even once it's mu'ad, it can revert back to being tam. So how does that happen? So Ezehu Tam is actually asking, how does it become tam and how does it become mu'ad? So, well, it's born tam. So how does it become mu'ad? We're going to answer first. Mu'ad kol she'a'idu bo shelosha yamim, vetam mishe'yachzor bo shelosha yamim, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda has in common, he's going by different days. In order to become mu'ad, it has to be that witnesses come and testify that it gored 3 times on 3 different days. If it gores 10 times all on one day, that doesn't count. Just to get a bad day, that just counts all as one. It has to be that this on 3 different days it gored, then it gets the status of mu'ad, and if it gores a 4th time after those 3 different days, then the owner will have to pay a full amount. Now, once it's considered mu'ad, it doesn't stay mu'ad forever, but rather, if it doesn't do anything for 3 days in a row, it's calm, then it goes back to being tam. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, Mu'ad she'a'idu bo shelosha pe'amim, vetam kol she'ehu hatinokot mishameshin bo ve'eno nogeach. Rabbi Meir has a much more stringent view. It's machmir on the owner of the animal. It becomes mu'ad when there's testimony that it gored 3 times, even if it's on the same day. 3 different days, same day, it doesn't matter. 3 times, no matter when, even on the same day, it becomes mu'ad. So a lot easier, Rabbi Meir thinks it's a lot easier for it to become mu'ad. Now, when does it become tam? When little children will be playing with it, petting it, and it doesn't do anything, which seems to be a higher bar than not doing anything for 3 days. Even if the children are like inciting it and petting it, it's still going to be totally calm. So Rabbi Meir therefore is going to be a lot more machmir. It's a lot easier for it to become mu'ad and more difficult for it to go back to being tam. That's Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Now, my Tama Rabbi Yehuda. What is the source for Rabbi Yehuda to say that it has to be on 3 different days? It has to gore in order to become mu'ad? We'll see 2 opinions. Amar Abaye, Temol had, mitemol tere, shilshom telata, velo yishmerenu be'alav atan lenegicha revi'it. You're going to use this pasuk here. Ono da kishor nagahu, if it becomes known that this ox is a goring ox, mitemol shilshom. So you have 2 words here. It means yesterday and the day before. Velo yishmerenu be'alav, and still the owner is not safeguarding it, then he has to pay shalem yishalem shor tachat ashor v'hamet yihiyelo. He has to pay for the ox that he damaged. So we're going to derive from these words. Abaye says, Temol by itself means 1 day. Mi Temol, the extra mem, already means 2 days before. And so Shilshom means 3 days before. So there you go. It has to be 3 different days. And then, and then he still doesn't safeguard it. So that's referring to a 4th time that it gores. And so 3 strikes, you're out. And then if something still happens after that, then he has to pay a full amount. But you definitely see, I mean, he has a good point, Rabbi Yehuda, that the pasuk does say different days, right? If yesterday, the day before. So it does sound like it has to be different days. And we learn the fact that it's 3 times from these words. That's the opinion of Abaye. Rava Amar, Temol mitemol had. Rava says, I'm not going to make a distinction between the extra mem and no extra mem. Temol or mitemol, that means 1 day before. Shilshom tere, shilshom means 2 days before. That's only 2 gorings. Velo yishmerenu ha'idana chayav. And he didn't watch it even today. So that's a 3rd time that he didn't watch it today. Then he will be chayav after that. According to this interpretation of Rava, There's two interpretations within Rava. According to this interpretation, Rava agrees with Abaye. You need 3 times for it to gore, and then after that, on the 4th time, after 3 times, it becomes mu'ad, and if it still kills someone or damages someone on the 4th time, then he will have to pay a full amount. They're just arguing how to learn it from the pasuk exactly. Since Rava doesn't say anything from the extra mem, so mitimol only means 1, shilshom means 2, velo yishmerenu is today. So whereas Abaye talks about yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, Rava just says the 3 days are today, the day before, and the day before that. But according to both, it has to go on the 4th time in order to be fully liable. We'll go with that interpretation, which is the majority, although Rashi has a different interpretation. He thinks that according to Rava, once it gores twice, Timol and Shilshom, then on the 3rd time, he already has to pay a full amount. And Rava is disagreeing with Abaye. Abaye says it has to go 3 times first, and then it becomes a mu'ad and you're liable for the 4th. According to Rava, it only has to go 2 times, and then for the 3rd, you have to pay a full amount. But the other Rishonim say, no, Abaye and Rava both agree, has to go 3 times. It's just a question of how they're dividing up the pasuk. All right. Rabbi Meir, my ta'ama. Now, according to Rabbi Meir, he said 3 times, even on the same day. And it doesn't matter if it's on 3 different days. Well, how is he going to interpret this pasuk? That does, in fact, talk about different days. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Meir, Richek negi chotav hayav, kereb negi chotav lokol sheken. He says a kal vachomer. Rabbi Meir says, I agree. I could read the pasuk just as well as you. I see it's talking about different days, but I can learn it from a kal vachomer. If he gored on 3 different days, still that's called mu'ad. When they're far away from each other, they're at least 24 hours away from each other, maybe more. Then all the more so if he gored back to back on the same day, that shows even more violence, more dangerous if he does that. So all the more so, after 3 gorings on the same day, the owner will be liable. Okay, so there you go. They actually can agree with what the pasuk means. Just a question of, are you going to build a kal vachomer upon that? Rabbi Meir does. Amru le zavat tochiach sherichaka re'ioteha temea kerba re'ioteha tehora. So the other sages told Rabbi Meir, hold on, we can break your kal vachomer from Zava. Zava, a woman who sees blood not during the expected time of her period. If she sees once or twice, she's only a Zava ketana. She just has to wait 1 day and go to the mikveh and she's fine. Whereas if she sees 3 times, and for a Zava it has to be 3 days in a row, only then she becomes a Zava Gedolah, which means she has to wait 7 clean days and bring korbanot. So we can prove from a Zava that your kal vachomer is not logical, because if she sees blood on 3 different days, then she becomes teme'ah. But if she sees many spottings of blood all on the same day, she is tehora. She's not tehora, she's just a zava ketana, right? She does not have to bring korbanot. She does not have to wait 7 clean days. So, see, for a zava, we don't make a kal vachomer and say, if on 3 separate days she becomes teme'ah, all the more so if it's closer together all in the same day. We do not say that. So your logic is incorrect. So we broke your kal vachomer. Amar lahen, Rabbi Meir responded to them that zava is an exception because the pasuk specifically says that this is not true for a zava. Harehu omer v'zot tihiyeh tumato bezovo tala katuv et hazav bere'ayot et hazava bayamim. Look at the pasuk here in Vayikra, where it's introducing and comparing a zav, a male, to a zava, to a female. And it says regarding the male, Zotiyeh tumato bezovo. Notice it's going to say the word zovo 3 times. Ra besavro et zovo, chatim bezo mizovo. So this is talking about a man. If a man sees an abnormal discharge 3 times, and see, it doesn't say anything about different days. So for a man, even if he sees 3 times on the same day, he becomes a zav gadol. He has to bring korbanot. And so that's true for a man. Yes, 3 times doesn't matter, even on the same day. But look at this word, vizot is a limiting word that teaches us this is true. The three times on the same day will make someone tameh only in zot, in this case for a man, but that excludes a woman. So the pasuk specifically has to exclude a woman. Otherwise, without the exclusion, we would follow the kal vachomer. Therefore, the kal vachomer is good. And normally you would make that logic, but here the pasuk goes out of its way to say vizot, that this is true for a zav, that's 3 times that he sees, and zava, not so. She's only tameh if it's 3 different days. Good. Mimai dehai vizot lemeute zava mereiyot ema lemeute zav miyamim. Hold on. I know that vizot is a limiting word, but how do you know that this is coming to limit the way a zava becomes tameh, that she only becomes tameh for 3 days in a row, and not if she has 3 sightings on the same day? Maybe vizot is coming to limit the male, the zav, that he only becomes tameh if he sees 3 on the same day, but not if he sees 3 discharges on 3 separate days. Maybe that's what is coming to limit. Amar kera v'azav et zobo lazachar v'lenekeba. Makish zachar lanekeba, ma nekeba b'yamim, av zachar b'yamim. No, that can't be, because the concluding pasuk in this whole chapter brings zav and zachar and nekeba back to back. To compare them. And we learn from there that zachar is like nekeva, just like for a woman, she becomes tameh on 3 separate days, so to a man becomes tameh on 3 separate days. How do we know, by the way, that a woman becomes tameh on 3 separate days? Because the pasuk says days regarding her. Shaki azub zob dama yamim rabim. Right? She sees blood on on many days. So it says yamim regarding her. So therefore, this pasuk that compares them is going to teach us that, just like a woman becomes tameh for seeing on 3 separate days, so to a man certainly is going to become tameh for seeing on 3 separate days. And therefore, the beginning pasuk 3, that says a man also becomes tameh for 3 times on the same day, the word vizot says, yes, but only a man and not a woman. Now we ask, Velakish nekeba lazachar, ma zachar beriyot, af nekeba beriyot. Wait, that last pasuk that's comparing them, how do you know you're comparing this way? Maybe compare it the other way and say, just like a man can become tameh for seeing 3 times on the same day, so to a woman also becomes tameh seeing 3 times on the same day. The pasuk regarding women said yamim rabim, that's true, but now that we're comparing them, maybe the comparison comes to be machmir on the woman comparing it to a man. So we say, no, not true. Hami'et rachamana vizot. That's why the opening pasuk says vizot. Seeing 3 times on the same day only makes a man tameh vizot, only in this case, and not a woman. But we ask, umara'ita, well, why do you decide to go one way and not the other? We know that we're comparing them, and we're limiting one of them. But how do you know that you should limit the woman and say, oh, she only becomes tameh 3 days in a row, but not 3 sightings? How do you know? Maybe you should do the opposite and limit the man and say he only becomes tameh if he sees 3 times on the same day, but not for 3 different days. And the answer is mistabera ka'eberiyot mema'et re'iyot, ka'eberiyot mema'et yamim. It just makes sense. That pasuk in the beginning of the perek, pasuk 3, is talking about sightings. It's talking about a male, and if he says zovo, says 3 times, and so it makes sense that it would be making a limit regarding sightings on the same day. Who does that law apply to? Only men if they see 3 times on the same day, and not a woman if she sees 3 times on the same day. She does not become a zavah gedolah. That makes the most sense, that the vizot should be limiting the case that it's talking about in that very pasuk. It would not make sense that the vizot that's talking about seeings should limit something about days, which is in pasuk 25, way later in the perek, and so therefore this derivation makes a lot of sense. In summary, we see that for a man can become tameh whether it's 3 times, he sees a discharge 3 times on the same day or on 3 different days. But for a woman, the pasuk says regarding women, yamim rabim, 3 different days. And I might have made a kal vachomer to say, well, if 3 different days she becomes tameh, all the more so if it's closer together and it's on the same day. But that's why the pasuk says vizot, 3 times on the same day applies only in this case of the male, but not the female. And that's why for Zavah we don't apply the Kal Vachomer, because we have a special Gezerah HaKutuv that says don't use the Kal Vachomer. But otherwise, the logic makes sense. And therefore, the Rabbi Meir says, when it comes to an ox, we don't have any special pasuk. And although the pasuk regarding an ox says, Timol Shilsham, 3 different days, I make a Kal Vachomer and say, if it becomes Mu'ad, when it causes damage on 3 different days, all the more so if it gores 3 times on the same day. All right, good. So now we see the derivation both for Rabbi Yehuda and for Rabbi Meir. Those were 2 opinions that were mentioned in the Mishnah. Now we see a Braita that gives 2 more opinions about how it becomes mu'ad and how it becomes tam. Tenor Banan. Ezehu mu'ad, kol she'idu bo shelosha yamim. It becomes mu'ad if witnesses come and testify that it gored on 3 different days. So you see, this is going to be Rabbi Yoseh, but the mu'ad definition is the same as Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. It in turn goes back to being tam if children are playing with it and it doesn't gore them. So you see that Rabbi Yoseh chooses the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda regarding mu'ad and the opinion of Rabbi Meir regarding tam. He's mixing and matching. That's Rabbi Yoseh. Rabbi Shimon omer mu'ad kol she'ha'idu bo shelosha pe'amim ve'lo amru shelosha yamim ela lachazara bilvad. Rabbi Shimon says it becomes mu'ad if it gores 3 times, even on the same day. So you see Rabbi Shimon agrees with Rabbi Meir regarding the definition of how it becomes mu'ad. And the 3 days, what's the 3 days about? That's how it goes back to being tam. Velo amiru, it sounds like he's referring to the pasuk. We can infer from here how Rabbi Shimon would explain the pasuk. When the pasuk says temol shilsham, 3 different days, that is an allusion, that's a teaching how that it becomes tam again if it didn't gore on 3 different days. So that's how he understands the pasuk. Anyway, Rabbi Shimon agrees with Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to how it goes back to being tam if it doesn't do anything on 3 days. So Rabbi Shimon is also mixing and matching, and he chooses the 2 other opinions opposite of Rabbi Yoseh. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava. Halacha keRabbi Yehuda b'mu'ad, she'arei Rabbi Yoseh modelo. Halacha keRabbi Meir betam, she'arei Rabbi Yoseh modelo. So Rav Nachman, name of Rav Ada bar Ahava, basically saying halacha is like Rabbi Yoseh. He's just saying it in a way that explains his reasoning. And so we're going to follow Rabbi Yehuda regarding how it becomes mu'ad, that it has to be 3 different days, because Rabbi Yoseh agrees with him. Rabbi Yoseh is the first opinion here, right? It has to be 3 different days. And we're going to follow Rabbi Meir in the way it becomes tam, because Rabbi Yoseh agreed with that one. So here, since there's, we have 2 opinions, and that agree that it becomes mu'ad this way, Rabbi Yoseh and Rabbi Yehuda, and in this one also we have Rabbi Yoseh and Rabbi Meir. So that's therefore the halacha is like Rabbi Yoseh's opinion. Amar le Rav Nachman velema mor halacha k'Rabbi Meir b'mu'ad she'arei Rabbi Shimon modelo v'halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda betam she'arei Rabbi Shimon modelo. So wait a second, Rava asked Rav Nachman, if you're looking for an opinion that has 2 Tanaim that support it, then you could actually say the complete opposite and say halacha is like Rabbi Meir regarding mu'ad because Rabbi Shimon agrees with it, and like Rabbi Yehuda went tam because Rabbi Shimon agrees with it. Basically, halacha would just be like Rabbi Shimon, that has to be 3 different times, even on the same day, becomes mu'ad, and 3 days that goes without goring, it becomes tam. And Rabbi Shimon also has another Tana that agrees with him in each case. So why'd you pick one way and not the other? Amar le ana keRabbi Yoseh sabirali, Rabbi Yoseh nimuko imo. And so the response is, yeah, you're right. I'm not following Rabbi Yoseh because he has another Tana that agrees with him. Rabbi Shimon also in both cases has another Tana that agrees with him. Rather, I'm following Rabbi Yoseh because we have a rule that Rabbi Yoseh's reasons are with him. The word nimuk seems to come from Greek. That means wisdom. Rabbi Yoseh is well thought out, his reasoning is sound, and therefore we always follow Rabbi Yoseh. In the Talmud Yerushalmi also, we have a rule, right? Halacha keRabbi Yoseh mehavero. We follow Rabbi Yoseh, not against the majority, but and against any of his colleagues, we follow Rabbi Yoseh. And that's why I'm actually following Rabbi Yosef here, because that's the general rule that we should follow him unless there's a majority or unless there's some other tradition or otherwise indicated, and therefore halacha is like Rabbi Yosef. Next question. Ariel Eliyahu שלושה ימים דקתנה ליעודי Torah or ליעודי Gabra. When it says that you need 3 different warnings, right? 3 days of warnings. That would be in the context of the Yehuda's opinion, who says 3 days. These 3 different testimonies. Who is the testimony directed towards? Is it to forewarn the ox or to forewarn the owner? Now, if it's to forewarn the owner, that makes sense. We have to tell the owner, listen, your ox gored, and that way we can take precautions. This makes sense for the Yehuda, especially that then there would be a day between. So if I'm the owner of the ox and some witnesses came and said, oh, your ox gored, on some day before, it doesn't have to be, the witnesses don't have to come the same day, but they have, they came today and says, oh, your ox gored, yesterday, a couple days ago, and now I'll take precautions, say, oh, I didn't realize it was dangerous, and so I'll make sure to guard him better. So if that happens 2 times, 3 times, and I still don't guard him, then I was forewarned 3 times, and I still didn't guard him. That's why I'm responsible. So that makes a lot of sense, that is to forewarn the owner. Whereas if you just tell me 3 times in a row, how am I supposed to do anything? I didn't have time in between to go and do anything about it. But the other opinion says, no, it's to forewarn the ox. Not that the oxes are going to become more careful, but rather it's simply to check off to keep tabs on how many times the ox gored. And so therefore, it's not really to forewarn the owner, it's just to keep tabs on how many times it gored. And therefore, it wouldn't matter if it's 3 times in a row, or if there's time in between or not, as we say here. Let's say the 3 sets of witnesses come all on the same day. Remember, even according to the Yehuda, who says the gorings have to be on 3 different days, but that doesn't indicate at all when the witnesses can have to come. Even if it gores on 3 different days, it could be the witnesses will, by the time they get to Beit Din, the 3 sets of witnesses for each of the gorings on each of the 3 days may show up to Beit Din all on the same day. Or even if it gored 3 days all on one day, the witnesses to each of those gorings in the morning, midday, and afternoon may come on different days. Okay, so we're focusing now not on how far apart the gorings are. We're just questioning within the Yehuda here. But we could ask the same question for the Bi Meir. But rather, we're focusing on the witnesses. If the witnesses come all on the same day, all 3 sets of witnesses. So here it makes a difference. If you say that the point is to forewarn the ox, meaning just to keep tabs on how many times it gored, so then it becomes mu'ad. Even if the 3 sets of witnesses come, one right after the other, and the owner had no chance to do anything different, still it becomes mu'ad because it gored 3 times. But if the point of having 3 sets of witnesses come and warn him is to forewarn the owner so he could do something about it, if all 3 come on the same day, then the owner can say, wait, I just heard about from the first one. I didn't get a chance to increase the safeguards yet, and so it doesn't count. You can't hold me responsible for a 4th one if I just heard about all 3 of them today. So that would be a practical nafkamina, right? There might be a limitation on becoming mu'ad if they all come on the same day. All right, good question. Mai, what's the answer? Let's try to answer it from a baraita. Tashema, en ashor na'asa mu'ad ad sheya'idu bo bifnei be'alim u'bifnei Beit Din. Ha'idu bo bifnei Beit Din shelo bifnei be'alim. Bifnei be'alim shelo bifnei Beit Din. En o na'ase mu'ad ad sheya'idu bo bifnei Beit Din u'bifnei be'alim. This is the beginning to Tosefta. That's not relevant to us. The proof is going to be from the continuation. But this is still an important halacha. That an ox does not become mu'ad unless the witnesses come and testify before the owners and before the Bet Din. If they only came to the Bet Din, but the owners weren't there, or if they testified in front of the owners, but the Bet Din wasn't there, it does not become mu'ad. It has to be in front of both. It has to be in front of Bet Din because it has to be registered. This is official testimony, so the Bet Din has to test out the witnesses, interrogate them, and so on. And it has to be in front of the litigant because, in all court cases, the litigant has to be present. The judges are not allowed to speak to only one side without the other being there. Okay, so that no matter what, everyone has to be there. Now, we continue. העידו שניים בראשונה ושניים בשנייה ושניים בשלישית, הרי כאן שלוש עדויות, והן עדות אחת להזמה. If two witnesses came regarding the first incident, and then another pair of witnesses came regarding the second time it gored, and then the third pair of witnesses came and testified about the third time it gored. So now you have three testimonies, and this is all combined for hazama. Hazama is if another set of witnesses came for any one of them or all three of them and said that they could not have been there at the time of the goring that they testified about because they were with us in a different place at the same time. So now what does this mean that they're together with regarding hazama? So we have to explain this. It's as follows. Nimset kat rishona zomemet hare kan shete aduyot vehu patur vehen peturin. Nimset kat sheniya zomemet hare kan edut ahat vehu patur vehen peturin. We have a scenario as follows. We have an ox. I own this ox, and it gored 4 times already. Once, 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago, and yesterday. Now, there are witnesses that saw each of them, right? And we'll call them, a witness set A, set B, and set C. They saw the first 3, and they all come to court on some day or some day afterwards. Let's say they all come on the same day, and they come and testify about, look, it gored those 3 times, and therefore, since it already gored A, B, and C times, so therefore the last goring, I'm going to now have to pay a full amount. So that's what's going to happen. That's what's happening to me in court right now. All 3 have testified, and now the court is telling me I have to pay a full amount for the 4th one. But just in time, the first set becomes edim zomamin. Another set of witnesses comes who are friends with the first, with set A, and they said, you were with us at a baseball game in Chicago on that day at the time of the goring. You could not have been there. So they become edim zomamin. Now, does that change anything? Well, yes, I'm not going to have to pay the full amount because now my ox was only gored twice before. Now, how about those edim? Do they have to pay just for half that they tried to make me pay for goring A, which now we see never really happened? Or should they pay the full amount because they almost made me pay a full amount for the 4th one? So we say, well, there are still 2 other testimonies, B and C, and therefore I, the owner, I am not liable to pay the full amount for the 4th one, and they also are not liable because those first set of witnesses can say it's not really primarily or totally our fault that I would have had to pay the full amount. They can say that the 2 other testimonies were there, and if not for them, if not for B and C, set A would not have caused me to pay a full amount. And so they say, well, since it's not wholly dependent on us, so we didn't cause it to become mu'ad. We're just 1/3 of the problem. And similarly, if then another set of witnesses comes and says, witnesses B, that set of witnesses were in a different place at that time, and so they can also say, wait, it was not our fault, only our fault, that this shor became a shor mu'ad, because there's witnesses C. They're the ones, if not for them, then our testimony alone would not have made it a shor mu'ad. Therefore, we should not have to pay a full amount for the last one that it gored, the one on the 4th day, and therefore they also only pay half. So here again, who patur, the owner only has to pay half for the last one that was killed, the fourth one, and set B also is patur. So far, so good. This is all very logical because each of the witnesses A and witnesses B said, listen, when we came, it was shor tam, and it was still shor tam. It only became shor mu'ad because of the last ones that came. So we didn't make it a shor mu'ad. We should not have to pay. Here's a surprising law. Nimset kachelishi zomemet kulan hayavin valzen emad vasitem lo kasher zamam. If then the third set of witnesses also become adim zomemin, then all three sets of witnesses, A, B, and C, each of them, of course, has to pay half the amount that they tried to make. They claimed that my ox killed something, and that would have made me pay half for A, half for B, half for C, each of those events. So they certainly will have to pay half. That's no matter what. But not only that, they have to now share in the cost of that fourth animal that my ox killed or gored. They have to split the cost of the full amount of that animal. Let's say it actually did kill, so I would have to pay half, and they would have to pay each a third of the other half to make up the full amount. In other words, because all three of them became edim zomemin, and so now we apply the pasuk, we do to them as they tried to do, and they can't each say, well, it was because of the other one, because collectively, we see them as a collective, all three of them came, so we're assuming that they must have actually conspired. And that's why they all three came on the same day, and to make me pay a full amount for the fourth animal that I was accused of goring. And so we learn from this, Ariel Eliyahu A Torah Shapir, all this makes sense if the point of the testimony is to forewarn the ox, and therefore even all on the same day, we consider it mu'ad. The point being that when the three sets of witnesses all come on the same day, then it's likely that they all know the fourth one, the owner of the fourth victim, and they're like, you know what? Let's conspire together and all lie together, so that I, the owner of the perpetrator ox, will have to pay a full amount to the last victim. And that's why, since they all came on the same day and all conspired, that's why they are all responsible to share in that burden of paying the difference between the half amount and the full amount. So all this whole baraita makes sense if you say that all three witnesses can come on the same day. אלא היא אמרת לי עודי גברה, למרו הנקמאה, ענן מי הווה ידעינן, דבתת לתה יומי, עטו הנה ומיעדאה לה. But if you say that the purpose of they only become a short mu'ad if it's on if the witnesses come on 3 separate days, because the purpose is to forewarn the owner so that the owner of the perpetrating ox can do something to safeguard his ox better. In that case, the 3 sets of witnesses came on 3 different days. Day 1, day 2, day 3, set A, set B, set C. In that case, the ones that came on the first day could say, you think, how were we supposed to know that on after 3 days, another set of witnesses would come, or another set of witnesses would come tomorrow, and another are going to come after that. About other ones. In other words, it's impossible to say that they're conspiring together. And therefore, if the witnesses are all coming on separate days, which is necessary, if you say La Ya'odeh Gabra, then there's no way to say that they're all conspiring together. And therefore, when all 3 turn out to be Edim Zoamin, they should not, even if all 3 become Edim Zoamin, they should not have to pay the full amount. Because they're not conspiring together. This whole baraita only makes sense if you say that they can come on the same day, and because they can come on the same day, therefore we assume that they are conspiring. If only 1 becomes edim zomemin or 2 become edim zomemin, so still they could say, well, I alone did not make him mu'ad. It's because of the other one, and because there's still another testimony left. But when all 3 of them become edim zomin, then it's clear that they must have been conspiring, and they're all guilty. And so this is a proof that In fact, the testimony is for the purpose of counting how many times it became mu'ad, not so that the owner can be forewarned and do something about it. Therefore, even if all three sets of witnesses came on the same day, it's still going to become mu'ad. Amar Rav Ashe, Amrita l'shma'ata kameh de Rav Kahana. Now, Rav Ashe says, I repeated this proof just now in front of Rav Kahana, and he said, V'amarli uliadeh Torah mi nicha, and he said, does this baraita make sense, even according to the opinion that says the purpose of the testimony is to forewarn the ox, just to tabulate how many times it gored? Even according to that opinion, it's hard to figure out, to assume that they're all conspiring, because the last set of witnesses can say, they say, how would we know that everybody standing in the waiting room of the courthouse, they're all coming to testify about this ox? We came separately. How are we supposed to know that the other ones? Who said that we're all conspiring? We came only to make him pay half. In other words, we weren't trying to make the short a short mu'ad. We thought that this ox never gored before, that when we came to Bet Din, right? So we came to make him pay half. And then turns out, while we're waiting in line, there's two other sets of witnesses, A and B, and they already said that this ox gored. And then when we came, we happened to be last in line, and so now ours is going to make it a short mu'ad. And now you're going to say, well, we have to pay up and share in the burden of the full amount. Why? Well, that's not fair. We should be treated the same as the other ones, and the other ones, and even if they become edim zomemin, they should also have to pay only half. How can you assume that we're all conspiring together? We each acted independently, and just because we happen to be in line, one behind the other, doesn't mean that we're conspiring. And the answer is the baraita is only talking about a case where we saw them signaling to each other. We're like, okay, you go first. They saw them making signs and gestures and to show that they knew each other and they knew they were coming in all at the same time, conspiring together to make him pay a full amount, right? They were friends with this. Really what happened is my ox gored only once, right? And it happened to be that the victim of the ox that gored only once, he had some friends who he convinced to go and lie to say that my ox had gored 3 times before that because he wanted to get paid a full amount. And we can tell, since they were signaling to each other, that they were all conspiring. You're right, but if they were not signaling to each other, and it doesn't look like they even knew that what knew each other or why the other was there to testify, then you're right. Then even if all became edim zomemin, they would only have to pay half. Rav Ashe Amar Keshebao Resufim. Rav Ashe gives another answer, not necessarily that they were signaling, but they came one after the other. Each one came 1 minute apart. Then that's also obvious, but it's not it can't be a coincidental that they're all testifying about the same thing if they're coming one right after the other. Ravina explains that this baraita is talking about a case where the 3 sets of witnesses that come and testify, they know who the owner of the ox is, but they don't know which ox it actually is. They just come and say, listen, we saw some ox come from your herd, and it gored this time A. And then the second said, B said, oh, we saw some animal come from your herd, and it gored on this day. And so they each say that. So they know for sure that this person has some ox or oxen that gored many times, and he should have been more careful. Now, in this case, the owner is not going to have to pay for any of those 3 gorings, because there's a rule that for a short tam, the owner only has to pay up to the value of the animal that gored. But we don't know which animal gored, so there's no way to assess what that value is. And therefore, they don't have to come in. He doesn't have to pay for any of those times, and therefore those 3 sets of witnesses, when they become edim zomemin, also will not have to pay a half amount. Therefore, what's the purpose of their testimony? Obviously, it's not to make him pay in those three cases, but rather they only are coming so that their testimony will join together to make the owner liable fully when it actually gores the fourth time, and then they say, oh, see, you were forewarned 3 times, and now you have to pay a full amount. Therefore, it's clear that they are conspiring with each other, because otherwise their testimony would have no effect. Okay, to clarify this, we ask, Ela hechi mi'a'edele. If they don't know which ox it is, then how are they testifying? What are they testifying about? What's becoming mu'ad if they don't know even an animal, which animal it is? And the answer is, Damri Torah naghana it lach bibkarach, iba elach lintureku lekule bakra. Rather, they're coming and saying, listen, there is a dangerous animal somewhere within your herd. Therefore, you better safeguard all of them. Right? If it's your problem that you don't know which one it is, but there's definitely something dangerous in there. So be careful, safeguard all of them. And the owner didn't, because yet another one, maybe more likely the same one that is dangerous, went and gored a second time, and then the third one could be the same one. And therefore, the owner should have been more careful with all of his herd, and that's why he is responsible for the full amount when a fourth incident happens. So these 3 witnesses that come, each time about the first 3, they're not going to make him pay anything at all. And that would make sense with the language of the Baraita. Actually says patur. Right? He is patur and they are patur. None of them have to pay anything. But if it turns out that all 3 are become edim zomamin, well then, what are you even coming for? If not to make him pay for, it's not to make him pay for any of the first 3 alleged gorings. Obviously, you're coming to make him pay a full amount for the fourth, and you're all conspiring witnesses. Obviously, you're all dim zomamin. Obviously, you're conspiring, and therefore they have to make him pay. They have to share in the difference between the half amount and full amount that they conspired by calling him a owner of a shor mu'ad. All right, last question. Back to the topic that we were talking about yesterday, of an insider. So here we have 3 people, an insider, a dog owner, and a victim. The insider incites the dog to go and bite someone, meaning the victim. What is the law? Who is responsible? Mishaseh vadai patur. Certainly the insider is not liable because he just did something indirectly. So that's, he's not a nice thing to do, but you can't make him liable monetarily. That's for sure. But bala kelemai, what about the owner of the dog? Maybe the dog owner can say, what did I do to him? I didn't do anything. My dog is actually very calm. It's the insider that caused this. And so neither has to pay because neither alone is responsible. Do we say that? Or maybe the victim can say, since you know that your dog is prone to incitement, and there is an insider here, and if the insider says something, then the dog will go and bite someone. So you should not have kept the dog around. Right? If I'm the dog owner, I have to know that that's part of the danger that someone may incite the dog, and if it does, it will go and bite someone. And so I am responsible because I have to know the nature of my dog. And yes, there are triggers around, and I can't blame that trigger. I can't blame the insider. I'm responsible for the whole thing because I know that it's prone to incitement. All right, so that's the 2 sides. Let's try to answer it. Amar bizera tashema betam sheyehu matinokot meshameshin bo ve'eno nogeach hanogeach chayav. This is why I bring this question here because we're going to try to answer it from our Mishnah that says, when does a shor become tam? When children play with it, meaning where they pet it, they poke it, whatever they do, they incite it. and it doesn't do anything. That's called shor tam. So that we can derive from this that, let's say it would. Let's say the children go and they're poking it, inciting it, and it would go and gore someone, then I, the owner of the ox, would be liable. So we can prove from here that even though someone else incited it, nevertheless, the owner of the dog is liable. Seems like a good proof. Amar Abaye, mikatani nagach hayav, dilma hanagach lahavetam, ubehinegicha la mechayev. Abaye says, no, the Mishnah didn't say that the owner is liable to pay. It just said that it won't be called shor tam. There's two different definitions. One is defining when does it revert back to being tam. So you could say, listen, if it's prone to being incited and will gore someone when children poke it, then that's not called shor tam. But it doesn't mean that I'm liable, right? These are different things that you're aiming at. To become shor tam, that requires a higher bar. Has to be really totally calm. Even when provoked, it doesn't do anything. Okay, fine. That I see is that now I see that it made teshuvah, and now it's a calm ox or a calm dog. But it doesn't mean that if it does so, that I would be liable, right? That requires a different level of responsibility. And in that case, I could say, well, it incited it. I'm not fully liable because someone else incited it. Okay, so therefore there is no proof from here. Let's try another proof. Tashema. Shisabo et hakeleb, shisabo nachash patur. Mishnah Sanhedrin that we cited yesterday says if incited the dog or a snake, he is not liable. Ma'lav patur mishaseh v'chaya ba'al keleb. Who is not liable? It doesn't just mean that the inciter is not liable, but the owner of the dog is liable. So it's a proof that yes, he is. La ema patur af mishaseh. Not necessarily, because we can interpret patur to mean both. Both the inciter and the owner are both not liable. So there's no proof from here. Rava says, we're not answering the question, but Rava just wants to add another insight. Even if you think that the inciter is liable when he incites the dog to go and bite a victim, another person, because the inciter, he's definitely the immediate cause for it. But even if you agree with that, you should still agree with the following, that Shisahu Batzmo Patur. Let's say the inciter and the victim are the same person. Okay, I have a dog, I'm walking my dog around, and then someone comes and incites the dog to say, here, come, bite me, and starts poking it and all that, and the dog bites the inciter, then for sure the owner of the dog is not liable. The reason is because we have a rule we've seen earlier in the Masechet that if one person already deviates from the norm, it does something that is dangerous, and then a second party comes and also deviates from the norm and does something dangerous, the second party is not liable. Because he said, listen, you're the one that did something weird first. So the dog owner can say to the inciter, yes, it's true, my dog did something that is unusual, that it went and bit you, but you're the one that started up, and you did something out of the ordinary by inciting the dog, so you brought this upon yourself. Since you're the one that acted differently from the norm first, you are liable, and I am not. Amar le Rav Papa le Rava. Itmar mishmeh de Resh Lakish kevatich. Rav Papa tells Rava, that's a good point, and in fact, Resh Lakish would agree with you. Amar Resh Lakish shete parot b'shut harabim achat ribusa v'achat mehalechet u'ba'ata mehalechet b'ribusa petura v'ribusa behalechet chayevet. This is the case that we saw earlier, that according to the Resh Lakish, you have two cows in the public domain. One is crouching, which is unusual activity. It's not a good idea to be lying down in the middle of the street, right? If someone comes and steps on you, runs over you, they say, well, what are you doing? Why are you lying down in the middle of the street? And so a cow that's crouching in the middle of the street is already doing something dangerous and unusual, and the other one is just walking normally. And the one that's walking kicks the one that is crouching. The owner of the walking one is not liable because of this very reasoning. He can say, the crouching ox did something unusual first and put himself in danger. My ox that was walking and kicked it, yeah, it's true, it did something unusual, an act of goring, but it did it only after yours already put itself in danger, and therefore I am not liable. The other way around, if the one that was crouching kicked the one that was walking, then the one that's crouching is liable because the one that's walking was doing something normal. And therefore the one that's crouching is the only one that did something out of the ordinary and would be responsible for goring. So you see that Reish Lakish supports this rule that anyone who does something dangerous out of the norm first is the one that takes responsibility, and the one that does it second does not have to pay. So this is what Papa told Rava, right? Says you have good support. But Rava did not accept it. Amar le ana bahi chiyuve mechayavna. Tamrinan le ki it lach reshuta lesagoye alai. Lebaote bi let lach reshuta. Rava says, I don't necessarily agree with Reish Lakish in this case. I may very well say that the owner of the walking ox is liable even in that case, because the owner of the crouching ox can say, yeah, listen, your ox has a right to walk over here, and if indeed my ox was crouching and your ox walked and stepped on it, then yes, you would not be liable, because what's my animal crouching here? But your animal does not have a right to kick. Right? It's true. Okay, so my animal's crouching. So what? But your animal's coming and kicking. That's a dangerous and active act of violence, and therefore you are responsible. So, in other words, Rava says, I don't necessarily agree with this rule that just because my ox is doing something weird first means that you are patur. No, if you're doing something wrong also, then you are also liable. But that's different from my case over here, where you incited the dog to attack yourself. This is different from a cow that's just lying there. It's not doing anything. It's being passive, and then something comes along and kicks it. Okay, you shouldn't have been in the middle of the street, but still, it's not inviting a danger. But here, the inciter is inviting, is trying to get the dog to come and bite him. Okay, you wanted it, you asked for it, you got it. In that case, you cannot blame the dog owner, no matter what. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.